This is a Your Farm Business podcast with Mike Krause of P2P Agri. Welcome to the Your Farm Business podcast, brought to you by P2P Agri. My name is Tom Moir, and I'm interviewing Mike Krause, the CEO and founder of P2P Agri, and Mike joins me now. G'day, Mike.
G'day, Tom. How you going?
I'm very well, mate. It's good to be speaking to you. Good to finally sit down and have this chat and learn about P2P Agri and your own background and how it all came about. So to begin with, Mike, could you just explain what is P2P Agri in the agricultural sense?
P2P Agri, Tom, was set up to help farmers with their financial decision making. So first of all, work out what their profitability is, where their financial strengths are, and then as a modelling tool, plan how we might improve that going forward. So it's both software, but also we do training in this space. So we train farmers one-on-one or in groups, currently doing it all over line and working with organisations like P2P Ag College in New South Wales.
Amazing. And so how long has that been going on for?
Look, we've had 4 years of working with Tocal. We're just moving into our next 2-year contract. It's interesting there, Tom, we were approached in COVID times when we traditionally would run these workshops in the CWA hall in the local town. And then we were told, no, you've got to do it all online. So we've perfected it to the stage now that farmers who do our courses don't want to go back to the old way. They're happy to sit back in their own offices and do the course, improve their financial literacy, at the same time understanding better their farm business performance.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, Mike, before we go further in another episode, we'll go more into P2P Agri itself and how it works and how it came about. But let's start with you and your background yourself. So have you always been involved in agriculture, or is that something that you came into later in life? What's the Mike Krause background story?
Mike Krause background, he found himself growing up in an agricultural college in South Australia called Roseworthy Ag College. And his father was a wheat breeder. So he bred different varieties of wheat. Halberd was an old variety which was grown quite widely in South Australia and also in parts of WA,
Okay.
in the low rainfall type areas. And I found myself in glasshouses crossing varieties of wheat at a primary school age of grade 7. So that's where my interest in agriculture started.
Wow. Very early days then.
Very early days. He came from a farm in the Murray Plains, so he came from a farming background, but was a very gifted and talented person and in scientific levels. So he was breeding wheat, and that's where I first introduced agriculture.
Okay, so then what happened from a work point of view after finishing school training? Did you head straight into agriculture after that?
Yeah, look, I struggled through primary school and struggled through high school and got to year 12, and I thought if I followed my father's footsteps in ag science, then I'd have to do really well in physics and chem, and I managed to bomb them. So, but I quite enjoyed economics, and I thought, okay, what if I blended economics and agriculture together? So I went off and did an agricultural economics degree at the University of New England in New South Wales. So, and really enjoyed eclectically farm business management and statistics. Now, statistics is about regression analysis and analysing big buckets of data and things like that. But I quite enjoyed that. And when I finished university, computers were coming out of buildings the size of, banks to suddenly sitting on desks. And I thought, oh, that's my future. So I did a bit of research and went on and did a master's in New Zealand in Lincoln University at Christchurch, looking at computer simulation and how we can model farming systems to look at better ways to find solutions and things like that. So from an early day, computers were of interest of mine, as well as farm businesses and those sort of things.
Yeah, okay. And the moving over to New Zealand for that study, was that because that was the only training around where you could sort of fulfill that need, or did that course stand out in particular to you for some reason?
Good question, Tom. I did a bit of due diligence, and because Armidale was probably one of the better courses for agriculture economics at the time, I just felt it's probably better if I get influenced by other lecturers and other institutions,
Yes, that
and
makes
did
sense.
quite a lot of research and found that Lincoln Uni at the time was the best place to understand simulation. So if you think about, simulations really come about because pilots get chucked into simulators to work out their skills in pilot training. Well, we were doing the same thing, but more in agricultural systems and understanding what things we knew and what things we didn't know. And so
Mm.
I was even learning an ancient coding language called Fortran to do that stuff. So I understand a little bit of coding, even though I don't do a lot of that today.
Yeah, wow. And so, what was the work pathway out of that study? Was there a clear sort of this is where you fit into the agricultural technology niche, or did you have to carve a bit of a path through there?
Yeah, look, I was really fortunate, Tom. I did both my undergraduate as a cadet for the South Australian Department of Ag, and they also helped me do my master's degree. And so, in reward for that, I get bonded for about 5 years. So, my pathway was really in the government from the first 9 years of my career, and I was working in head office in the Minister of Agriculture's office as a liaison officer, and that gave me the experience to know I didn't want to get into politics, but I wanted to get active in understanding farmers. So I actually went as an agricultural economist and worked in the Riverland in South Australia, which gave me exposure to grape growers and citrus growers and wheat growers and sheep people. And I wanted to knock my theories into practice with farmers. So I spent about 4 years up there, really enjoying that. Farmers used to stir the hell out of me being a university graduate
Oh,
and
yeah,
not
that's
knowing what I was talking about and that sort of stuff.
yeah,
So that's really where I blooded my practical knowledge, really, with
yeah.
there.
There's no better place to cut your teeth, really, than going out to a farm and being humbled by what you know and what you don't know.
Exactly. So I found out I knew a lot less than I thought I knew.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so, where did the journey take after that? Where did you go?
Look, when I came back to Australia, spreadsheets were invented. So things like, well, back then it was Multimate, but then it became Excel, and I used to do a lot of modelling in Excel, helping farmers or looking at research projects where the researcher would say, well, if the farmer adopted this on his farm, how much would it improve his efficiency and profitability? So it took me to that, and then I was got. I found my creativity in the public service was a bit restricted, so I decided to join a bank. And as a agricultural economist, I was talking to farmers probably 2 times a week about commodity price forecasts and what
Oh,
influences
yeah.
farming businesses and those sort of things. So I was with the bank for about 4 years. And that was a really interesting time because the bank in Eyre Peninsula, where they'd had a run of poor years, the banks were actually taking keys off farmers, which was a really bad environment. But they used to think, "Oh, Mike, you can talk to farmers now in the public. We'll wheel you out to talk to farmers in this difficult
Uh,
situation to try and see if we could find our way forward." So that was a difficult time, but it really got me understanding how banks view lending to farmers through the good and the bad times. And that was just fascinating to me. And that came to an end really when the bank went belly up. They lost a lot of money themselves. So after taking keys off farmers, the government took keys off the managers there. And my career with banking finished. They said, you can leave Monday or Monday, Mike. Which one would you like? So I joined an ag consulting firm that consulted on ag insurance to the Lloyd's of London in London, and learnt about insurances. And then that took me into 4 years later, I started my own consulting practice, consulting to farmers on farm business management issues like profitability, succession planning. Do I buy the next door neighbour out? What can I pay for it? And if I have 2 years of drought, will the bank still love me? Those sort of questions that I helped.
Yeah, wow. So you've really had quite a vast cross section of industries that you've sort of worked in. You've touched on very different areas and also both sides of the coin. It's not just the farmer's perspective; it's also that accountancy, finance side as well. So what was kind of motivating you through all of this, Mike? Was it the passion for the statistics and numbers, or for agriculture itself, or for just needing to try and make systems run better? What was motivating you?
Uh, what was motivating me way back, even when I was doing university, I witnessed there was quite a disparage between good farm business management, understanding, and knowledge, and what farmers actually did. Now, back in those days, we had the wheat board that used to regulate the wheat industry. We used to have the AWB that would regulate wool pricing. And so everything was quite controlled by institutions and governments, to suddenly coming out of that. And we had free market, and we had a lot more risk involved in agriculture. And I could just see the modelling that I'd done and looking at the what ifs, looking at the variations, was a way going forward to really help farmers more completely understand the farming business system they're in, and therefore make better decisions to continue to grow their businesses, not for themselves, but also a lot of, as you would know, Tom, a lot of farmers are focused on passing the farm on to the next generation as better environmental managers or better business people. So really helping farmers with their long-term strategic plans in that area.
Again, utilizing skills from all those different industries that you've had exposure to. So it's always funny how the things that you go and do and study and learn, you don't know how they're going to apply later on down the track, but you must have run into that a few times.
Yeah, a lot of times. In fact, one of them was quite interesting. I ran a workshop called Risky Business. So you guys who are listening to us would have played Monopoly or Squatter. And if you're playing those games, you can understand that Tom's level of risk taking is different than Mike's level of risk taking, but we're playing the game together to try and see who the winner was. Well, in Risky Business, it was actually developed by Dr. Amirabadi out of WA Uni, and I ran it for a number of different organisations like banks and universities and farmer groups. And when I'd run it, the game would it'd give you a farm for the day, and you'd have to play 5 seasons of with that farm. Everyone gets given the same farm, and you're given partial knowledge, like farmers do. You don't know what the season is you're going into. Do you know what commodity prices you're going to experience this season? No, but we know the range we could go through. We know what our productivity levels were going through. So participants would have to decide what enterprises they were going to run and what input levels they were going to put in, and then what forward pricing they might do. And then suddenly the season is thrust upon them, and oh no, it was a drought. So how did we go? Now the computers would do all the calculations, and they'd know, oh, Tom handled that season much better than Mike. Righto, let's play the next season, see if we can learn from him, and go from there. And at the end of those workshops, the farmers wouldn't give my laptops back. And I said, oh, why don't you want to give my laptops back? Those days, they were pretty expensive. And they said, oh, we want to take these computers home and put our numbers in it. And I thought, oh, okay, farmers get modelling. They get what if type stuff. So that was really the one of the starts of why we wanted to create P2P Agri, to help farmers understand their businesses better and do those what if type analysis for them.
Yeah, okay. So the idea to actually develop that software, that came much later in your journey of studying and learning and working in all those different environments.
Yeah, look, I don't want to age myself now, Tom, but that probably started about 20 years ago. And I was still predominantly consulting to farmers and doing other things like that. So I started myself investing in software prior to the cloud being popular. It was actually living in Visual Basic and Excel, where farmers could put their data in. Now, what made the challenge for us is that in the game, it was actually a mixed farm at Merredin. So it's in WA, and that was really where it was. So we knew what the yield variations were and the price variations and costs. but our software today allows any farmer in Australia to utilise it. It doesn't have to be a Merredin-based farmer. But also it was aimed at helping farmers in being simple enough for farmers to put their own data in, not depending on a consultant or an accountant or an advisor to do it on their behalf.
Yeah, so
So
it's really a great tool to help streamline that process and just bring it all together, which would help with benchmarking and number crunching, as you say. So along that pathway, then, what have been some milestones for you? Or whether, I mean, the development of the software would be one, but there's always those build up milestones that kind of get you to where you are and get you where you're going. So, what are some standout moments for you?
a number of different standout moments. One, and a lot of it comes from working with farmers. I know I got out of university and had this farm business management background and had this computer and modelling and planning type background. But does it really work in reality? That's what I learned out of the books, and just this is what we studied. One of my first clients that I visited was actually a citrus grower in the Riverland of South Australia, and he was just taking over the farm from his dad. And he had a number of plantings that were mature and some weren't quite as mature. And if you know citrus at all, it takes about 6 years before it starts to come in production and about 10 years to get to full production. So it's a really long-term business model game. And he said, and he was a really dry, drawl Australian. He said, you better not stuff this up, Mike. So I sat back, did a lot of my Excel modelling. And I said, no, I think you'll be fine. This is where your level of financial performance of your business is today. This is where I think you'll be in 5 years' time, and you're going in the right direction, and you should be fine. Now, our conversation finished after I did that job. I didn't go back yearly just to check whether my theory was working, Tom. But 7 years later, he came, our paths crossed again, and he said, Mike, you never know. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to call a spade a shovel. What I did 7 years ago was absolutely, and he said, Mike, it worked to a T. All your predictions came right and is exactly where we ended up 5 years later. And I thought, wow, okay, this modelling does work. There's credibility in it. Yes, we can use it and depend upon it. So that was a bit of an aha moment. Another one was with a farmer who came to me and said, Mike, I'm going to buy the next door neighbour up. It's come up for sale. And as most farmers, I'm going to buy it hell or high water. But what I want to know is if I buy it and I have 2 years of drought, will the bank still love me? And I thought, oh, okay, that's a bit of responsibility. So then I go away and figure out with my Excel spreadsheet and play around with the effects of drought and the high price that he was paying at the time. And again, I didn't see him really until about 5 or 6 years down the track. Our paths crossed in an airport, in Sydney Airport, and he was flying out and I was flying in. And he said, oh, Mike, guess what? That modelling you did, I went and bought the land for the high price, and we did have 2 years of drought, but I didn't lose one night of sleep because I knew I was going to pull through. And
Wow.
exactly what happened. And I thought, okay, that's another evidence to me that this modelling really does work. If we really turn it around and use it as a proactive tool rather than a reactive tool, we can start to make some really good business decisions. We might be able to stretch the envelope. I had another example where a farmer had come to me and said, oh, Mike, the auction's next week, next door, there's 2 parcels of land and I want to go for one of them. And I said, oh, okay, let's do the modelling. And he did the modelling with me and he said, okay, what happens if we bought 2? So I put 2 parcels in there. He said, oh, that might work. So he actually went to the auction and he bought both parcels of land, and he's still a very successful farmer in his own right in his district. And then that was an example of me saying, okay, we could probably use this modelling to help us understand the capability of our business better, and therefore take more risks rather than doing the back of the envelope sums, or I just think about between my ears and invent the numbers in my head and see what level of risk I want to take and make those decisions. So those examples with farmers working with me, and as a result, really gave me a strong belief that what I'd learned at university and then developed in software activity was really an effective way for farmers to utilise and grow their businesses.
That's amazing. Those case studies, and it would be so rewarding to actually see the proof in the pudding. And sometimes that took years to actually come about. It's not something you can just test overnight. And droughts, 2 droughts in a row. It's not pretty unlucky to get 2 droughts in a row and be in that position. But yeah, the
Mm,
confidence. So that would be a very high risk and anxiety driven scenario to be in for almost anyone. So yeah, really interesting.
yeah, so you're right, Tom. It then reaffirms that your faith and belief was really real and those sort of activities. So that was one of the milestones. Another milestone was GRDC approached me to write a manual in farm business management, which ended up being it's called Farming the Business. That farmers can get access to it now for the cost of postage, which I think is $10. Um, and that was published about 10 years ago, and it's gone to its seventh reprinting. So it's been really popular with Australian farmers. But that was interesting too for me, because you write a book and you think it's a bit like you've had a baby with your wife and you present the baby for the first time to your parents and you think, I wonder whether they'll love it. It's a bit like when you produce a book, you think, oh, will the industry love it or they'll just can it and things like that. So that was another pivotal moment for me, because I'm getting farmers who don't really know me but know the book and say, oh, this book is now the Bible for farm business management. So that's been another milestone for me to say, yeah, all that learning that I did back then and putting that knowledge back in the industry is it's going to be a good legacy, really.
Yes, yeah, well, up to a seventh reprint, that speaks volumes itself. But yeah, and also the fact that can be cross applied across different industries around Australia, because even your background, you've got that citrus and that kind of type horticulture based farming, and then also Merredin. You're not growing grapes in Merredin very well. You're doing it a bit bigger out there,
Yeah.
so it's very different. So the GRDC that would have called upon many different aspects of your learning to pull that together.
Yeah, look, it was, and it was actually a team effort. Had a good team around me to do that. If anyone has an iPad, you can actually download it for free off iTunes, and it has over 50 embedded training videos in it.
Wow.
So it was quite innovative for the time 10 years ago when we put it together, but probably the nature of the market, the hard copy of the book. It's interesting. Back 10 years ago, we thought ebooks might take over the world and no one's going to pick up an old-fashioned book anymore.
Yes.
Well, I think 80% of the demand for this book still is the old-fashioned. I want to hold it in my hand and I want to put dog ears in it and I want to scribble on it and those sort of things. So,
Yes.
yeah, so that was another pivotal point of my time. And also, I had a good team together so that we wrote the book simply. Bit of my background, Tom, I'm actually dyslexic. And back when I was going through primary school and high school, that was always deemed to be a something that was a disability that I had to overcome rather than a gift. And it's helped me think about complex situations a lot simpler and then present it simply. So that's been really useful in the computer modeling sphere as well as putting that book together. So it was written relatively clearly and simply, and my wife is a wonderful editress, and so she edited it and solved my grammatical issues that I have as being dyslexic.
There you go. No,
Yeah.
that's quite an achievement. And it's really good that you've brought that mentality towards the projects as well. Of no, this is something we can do. This is something we can simplify. This is something we can break ground with. So yeah, and hats off to you for coming at it from that angle, Mike. Because a lot of people like to turn around at that point and say, oh, it's a bit hard, but yeah, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. So just determination to see if we can put these things simply, because agriculture is not a simple business. It's not an easy business. There's so many permutations. There's so many things that can happen, but it's a rewarding business. And without agriculture, none of us are eating, none of us are wearing clothes and those sort of things. So it's an essential industry for us. And if we can help farmers in that essential industry, then that's fantastic.
And so, looking back across all of that, Mike, what would your advice be to a 20-year-old Mike? Now, we're not asking how old you are now. We're avoiding that particular hot button question. But if you had to go back to 20-year-old Mike and give a bit of advice, what would that look like?
That's a really interesting one, Tom, because all the institutions that were educated me and gave me a good grounding in agriculture don't really occur anymore. The farm business management degrees that were out there, I think you can count on one hand the institutions that provide that now. They used to have a lot of TAFEs or ag colleges back then training farmers in this space, and also learning the basics of good farm business management and those sort of things. I think the biggest key thing is just to, and I was really fortunate, I had a vision of where I wanted my career to go early on, and just to follow that vision. So even helping farmers with their financial planning, well, I could do that in government, I could do that in banking, I could do that in insurance, I could do that as a consultant. So my domain stayed the same, my aim stayed the same, I just did it in different ways with different organisations. So I guess I'd just say to me back in my early career, keep going what you're doing, be inquisitive, understanding a lot of this technologies will come across your desk, utilise the good bits of it, don't utilise the bad bits of it, and just keep looking at ways that you can improve your efficiency and effectiveness in achieving what you've set out. And for me, it was always helping farmers become better business people.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, in the current environment, we're recording this. It's the beginning of 2026. A lot's happened. There's been a lot of very fast developments in technology and in the space in the last couple of years. People in agriculture are picking that up at different speeds. We still see people doing agriculture in a, well, I don't want to say an old-fashioned way, but a traditional method. And you see other people jumping on board with technology really quickly. So, just before we wrap this episode up, Mike, what's your current take early 2026? What's your sort of prediction or your overview of how the farming industry is operating at the moment, and especially in regards to benchmarking and keeping all those numbers together?
That's a really good question, Tom. A number of facets for there. I mean, we're seeing technology come to us quicker than we can blink at times. Like for me, the advent of AI, it presented to itself 18 months ago. And I'm involved in developing software, and I'm thinking, oh, is that going to run over? Or do I have to be fearful for this big wave that's about to crash down on me?
Yes.
And it took me about 4 or 5 months to get over that stress to think, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That I've changed my mind that really that AI type thing, view it as a wave coming at you. But our role now is we're going to surf that wave. We're going to jump on our surfboard. We're going to paddle like anything, stay on that wave and see what it can do for you. And for us in P2P Agri, we're actually using AI in about 5 different ways in our platform. In fact, our coding efficiencies probably increased about 5-fold because of it. So we can do a lot more now. And I reckon that analogy is very similar to agriculture. We're having robotic stuff coming to us. We're having drones coming to us. We're having satellite imagery coming to us. We're having even satellite fences being developed. And so livestock are being more contained. There's a lot of technologies coming our way. And I think we've just got to be very clear in our own mind as business people what our mission is, where we're heading, we're on the horizon, and working out which technologies are going to be most effective for us to help to achieve that. Tom, you mentioned that interesting word of benchmarking. When I went to university, they said benchmarking was about as useful as reading the tea leaves in your cup of tea. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I better put it to practice. And probably about 30 years ago, I had about 200 farmers, dryland farmers in South Australia who we collected data from to look at benchmarking. So how good is Tom going against Mike and all those sort of things.
Yep.
and we collected them, which is interesting. You could divide one number or another and work out whether Tom was more efficient than Mike, but the benchmarks, they're really good at helping you understand what questions you should research more into your farm business. Rarely they give you the answers to how you can do that. So you've got to unwind it. And to me, benchmarking is the most important thing, is that we set our own benchmarks to ourselves. So if Tom wants to improve his 100-meter running, well, he runs it, he clocks it, then he puts himself through a training program and he runs it again and benchmarks himself. He doesn't want to benchmark himself against Mike, who will take 5 times to run 100 meters if he made it at all. So benchmarks are really good if they're put effectively to your own performance.
Yes.
But what I've learned in my career is that really it's the modelling forward of your profitability. It's the modelling forward of your balance sheet, of your cash flows, that'll help you answer those questions as to, if I want this benchmark to go from here to here, how I can go about doing that. So that's what really pointed me back more to computer modelling rather than benchmarking, which I know is very popular in different parts of Australian agriculture. I think you've got to use a certain intelligent hat on when you're in benchmarking to know how best to use it, and not to slash your wrist because I'm always worse than Tom every year and I'm going to give up.
Yeah.
So I think the future of agriculture is amazing. We've got challenges. We've got challenges of increasing land values, and so that has its issue with farmers are looking to expand their businesses and those sort of things. But again, I think if we've used the modelling type approach and the what ifs, that'll help us make those wise decisions. So I'm excited for the future in agriculture. There's a lot of technologies going to help us improve our efficiencies and the way we're going to produce our fibre and food for our market and for international markets.
Very good. All right, Mike, I think we'll leave it there for this episode, but thank you so much. It's great to get an insight into your background and your training and your all of those achievements along the way to creating what P2P Agri is today. So look forward to chatting again sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you very much. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Your Farm Business podcast. For more information or to get in contact with Mike, simply search for p2pagri.com.au.